The metal walls of the engine room felt cold against Nix's back as she pressed herself into the corner, trying to make herself invisible. Her iridescent skin, normally glowing with a soft blue light, was dim from exhaustion. She had been working for 20 hours straight, with no breaks. This was normal for Selenites aboard the Galactic Confederation vessel Astral Voyager. "Engineer Nix, where are you hiding now?" Commander Draz's voice echoed through the cramped space. His heavy footsteps grew louder. Nix quickly wiped the sweat from her forehead and stepped out from her brief moment of rest. "Here, Commander. I was checking the coolant lines in Section 7. Commander Draz towered over her, his scaled cerulean skin reflecting the harsh lights overhead. His 4 eyes narrowed as he looked down at her. "The plasma converters in Section 3 are operating at 89% efficiency. Unacceptable." "But, sir, the manual states that anything above 85% is within optimal range." The back of Draz's hand struck her face before she could finish. Nix stumbled backward, tasting blood in her mouth. She kept her eyes down, knowing that looking directly at him would only make things worse. "Are you correcting me, Dirt Digger?" he asked, using the common slur for Selenites. "No, Commander, I apologize. Fix the converters. I want them at 95% in 2 hours. And no meal break until it's done." Nix nodded silently as he walked away. This was her 3rd missed meal this week. Around her, the other engineers, all Xyrillians, pretended not to notice. Some even smiled slightly at her punishment. She gathered her tools and made her way to Section 3. The converters were actually working perfectly, but she would have to push them beyond safe limits to reach 95% efficiency. It was a dangerous and pointless task, but she had no choice. As she worked, Nix thought about her home moon of Caldoria. She remembered the crystal caves where she grew up before the Xyrillians came and forced her people to work in the mineral mines. Selenites were naturally skilled with crystals and metals, which made them valuable workers. But the Xyrillians saw them as tools, not people. Nix was different. Her understanding of engineering was so exceptional that she had been noticed by a visiting official and assigned to a space vessel instead of the mines. This was considered a great honor, but the reality was just a different kind of prison. The ship suddenly shuddered. Alarm lights flashed red. Nix quickly checked her diagnostic pad and saw that the main power coupling was failing, a serious problem that could leave them stranded in space. She ran to the central engine room, where other engineers were already gathering. Commander Draz was shouting orders that would make the problem worse. "Sir," Nix said, approaching cautiously, "the issue is in the quantum field stabilizer. If we reroute power through the secondary grid, and then gradually silence." Draz roared, "Do not interrupt your superiors." But Captain Voss, who had just entered the engine room, raised his hand. "What were you saying, engineer?" Nix swallowed hard and explained her solution again. The captain, though also a Xyrillian, was known to be more practical than most. "Try it," he ordered. With shaking hands, Nix implemented her fix. Within minutes, the alarm stopped and the ship's engines returned to normal function. Captain Voss nodded. "Good work." For a brief moment, Nix felt a flicker of pride. But as the captain left, she saw the rage in Commander Draz's eyes. Later that night, as Nix finally returned to her tiny sleeping quarters, she found Commander Draz waiting with 2 security officers. "Engineer Nix, you are under arrest for sabotage," he said with a cold smile. "Sabotage? But I fixed the problem." "After causing it," Draz replied. "Our investigation shows that the power coupling failure originated from Section 3 where you are working alone." "That's not true," Nix protested. "The logs will show. The logs have been reviewed and confirm your guilt," one of the security officers said, though Nix knew this was impossible. They took her to a holding cell where She spent a sleepless night. In the morning, she was brought before Captain Voss. "The evidence against you is concerning," the captain said, not meeting her eyes. "However, given your assistance during the crisis, I have decided to be lenient." Nix felt a moment of relief. "Instead of formal charges, you will be removed from this vessel at our next stop." "Removed? You mean transferred to another ship?" Nix asked. Captain Voss looked uncomfortable. "No, you will be released from service." Commander Draz, standing nearby, smiled. "We're approaching a planetary system now. There's a world there. That should be suitable." Nix understood then. They were going to abandon her on some unknown planet. This was worse than prison. This was a death sentence. "Please," she said, "I've done nothing wrong." "The decision is made," Captain Voss said, standing to leave. "Prepare her for departure, Commander." The next hours passed in a blur. Nix was given a small survival pack and pushed into an escape pod. Through the small window, she could see a blue-green planet growing larger. "This world is primitive," Commander Draz told her as he programmed the pod. "The natives are violent and technologically backward. They call it Earth. If you somehow survive the landing, they'll probably kill you anyway. Why are you doing this?" Nix asked. Draz leaned close. "Because you need to learn your place. Selenites who think they're equal to Xerillians are dangerous. Your people need this reminder." The pod door sealed shut. The last thing Nix saw was Draz's satisfied face as he pressed the launch button. The small craft shuddered as it entered Earth's atmosphere. Warning lights flashed as the heat shield began to fail. Nix strapped herself in tightly and closed her eyes, certain she was about to die. The pod crashed through trees, bounced across open ground, and finally came to rest in a small clearing. Metal groaned as the craft settled. Emergency systems sprayed fire-suppressant foam over smoking panels. Nix remained still, surprised to be alive. Pain radiated from her left arm and side. Her universal translator had been damaged, its display cracked and flickering. Outside, she could see tall green plants swaying in the wind under a blue sky. It looked peaceful, but she remembered Draz's warning about the violent natives. She needed to hide. With shaking hands, Nix gathered what supplies remained intact and forced open the damaged door. The air that rushed in smelled strange but breathable. She stumbled out, wincing at the pain in her side, and looked around. In the distance, she could see structures that must be some kind of settlement. In the other direction was a dense collection of tall plant trees, her database supplied. Nix headed for the trees. She needed to find shelter, assess her injuries, and figure out how to survive on this alien world, where everyone and everything was a potential threat. She didn't know that less than a mile away, a human named Alan Carter had seen the streak of her falling pod across the morning sky and was already hiking toward the crash site, his curiosity overcoming his usual caution. She didn't know that her life was about to change forever. Alan Carter wiped sweat from his forehead as he climbed the small hill. The morning sun was getting warmer, and his hiking boots crunched on the dry Montana soil. He had been in his workshop when he saw something streak across the sky and crash. In the distance, most people would have called the authorities, but Alan wasn't most people. Since losing his job at the Aerospace Company 3 years ago, Alan had kept to himself. The small town nearby was nice enough, but he preferred the quiet of his isolated home and workshop. Today, though, curiosity had pulled him outside and toward whatever had fallen from the sky. As he reached the top of the hill, Alan stopped and stared. In a small clearing below sat what could only be described as a spacecraft. It was small, about the size of a car, with smooth silver-gray metal that didn't look like anything manufactured on Earth. Part of it was damaged and black, from what must have been a rough entry into the atmosphere. Definitely not a weather balloon, Alan muttered to himself. A habit from years of living alone. He approached cautiously, his heart racing. This could be the discovery of the century, but something told him to be careful. The door of the craft was open, and he could see that whatever had been inside was now gone. Alan examined the ground and found strange footprints leading toward the woods. They were smaller than his own feet and oddly shaped. He followed them, moving quietly through the trees. After about 10 minutes, he spotted movement behind a large pine tree. Something or someone was hiding there. "Hello?" he called softly. "I'm not going to hurt you." There was no response, but he could hear quick, shallow breathing. Alan took a few steps closer. "My name is Alan. I saw your ship crash." "Do you need help?" A face peered around the tree, and Alan gasped. It was clearly female in shape, but not human. Her skin had a blue-purple sheen that seemed to glow slightly, and her hair looked like fine strands of crystal that caught the sunlight. Her eyes were large and completely silver, with no visible pupils. She said something in a language Alan couldn't understand. It sounded like musical chimes mixed with words. "I don't understand," Alan said, holding his hands up to show he was unarmed. "But you're hurt." He pointed to her arm, which she was holding against her body. There was a dark blue liquid that must have been blood. The alien woman pressed herself back against the tree. She looked terrified. Alan slowly reached into his pocket and took out a small first aid kit he always carried when hiking. He opened it and held up a bandage. "For your arm," he said, pointing again. The alien watched him warily but didn't run. Alan took that as a good sign. "I have a place," he said, pointing in the direction of his home. "Safe, food, medicine." He made eating motions and pretended to wrap a bandage around his own arm. The alien woman seemed to consider this. She looked back toward her crashed ship, then at the woods around them, and finally at Alan. After a long moment, she nodded once. Alan smiled and took a step back, giving her space. "This way," he said, pointing. They walked slowly through the woods, keeping distance between them. Alan noticed she was limping slightly and occasionally touched a small device on her wrist that seemed damaged. Whenever they heard a distant car or plane, she would freeze in fear. As they approached his property, Alan's small house came into view. Behind it was a larger building, his workshop. He led her toward the workshop rather than the house, thinking it might seem less threatening and would be easier to hide her if anyone came by. Inside the workshop, the alien woman looked around with interest. Tools hung on walls, half-finished projects sat on tables, and in one corner was an old couch where Alan sometimes slept when working late. "You can sit," Alan said, gesturing to the couch. "I'll get some things to help you." She didn't understand his words, but seemed to grasp his meaning. She sat on the edge of the couch, still alert and ready to run. Alan went to a cabinet and returned with a better first aid kit, some water, and a blanket. He set them on a table near the couch, not getting too close. "Water," he said, taking a sip from one bottle to show it was safe, before offering her the other. The alien took it cautiously. She examined the plastic bottle, then sniffed the water. After a moment, she took a small sip, then a larger one. She must have been very thirsty. Alan pointed to her injured arm. "Can I help?" She looked at him for a long time, and slowly extended her arm. The cut wasn't as bad as the blue blood made it seem, but it needed cleaning. As gently as possible, Alan cleaned the wound with antiseptic wipes. The alien winced, but didn't pull away. He noticed her skin felt warmer than human skin, almost like touching sun-heated metal, but soft. Once the wound was clean, he covered it with a bandage. "There?" he said. "Better?" The alien woman touched the bandage and said something in her language. Though Alan couldn't understand the words, her tone sounded like a thank you. "You're welcome," he replied. She touched the damaged device on her wrist and frowned. She pointed to it and to her mouth and made a talking motion with her hand. "A translator?" Alan guessed. "It's broken?" She nodded, seeming to understand his question. Alan leaned closer to look at the device. It was like nothing he had ever seen, with tiny crystal components and circuitry more advanced than any Earth technology. "I might be able to fix it," he said. "I'm good with electronics, but I'd need to understand how it works first." The alien pointed to her device, then to some of the tools on Alan's workbench, making a fixing motion. "Tomorrow," Alan said, making a sleeping gesture and pointing outside where the sun was starting to set. "You need rest first." He went to a small refrigerator in the corner and took out some food, an apple, some cheese, and bread. He offered them to her. She sniffed each item carefully before taking a small bite of the apple. Her eyes widened in surprise, and she took another, larger bite. She seemed to enjoy it. As she ate, Alan noticed flashing lights in the distance. Someone had found the crash site. He quickly went to the window and saw several government vehicles driving up the road toward the woods. "We have a problem," he said, pointing to the lights. The alien woman came to look, and when she saw the vehicles, her face filled with fear. Alan made a quick decision. "You need to hide." He led her to a storage room at the back of the workshop and moved some boxes to reveal a small hidden space, where he kept his most valuable tools. "In here," he said, gesturing. The alien hesitated, then looked at the approaching lights again. She climbed into the hiding spot, and Alan covered it with the boxes again, making sure to leave a small gap for air. "I'll keep you safe," he promised, though he knew she couldn't understand his words. "Trust me." As headlights swept across the front of his property, Alan closed the workshop door and walked toward his house, trying to look casual. He didn't know why he was protecting this alien visitor, but something about the fear in her eyes told him she needed help. And for the first time in 3 years, Alan felt like he had a purpose again. 2 weeks had passed since Nix crashed on Earth. The government teams had searched the area for 3 days, taking pieces of her escape pod away in large trucks. Alan had spoken to them briefly, claiming he hadn't seen anything unusual. They seemed to believe him, or at least had no reason to suspect he was hiding an alien in his workshop. Now, Nix sat at Alan's workbench, carefully connecting tiny wires in her damaged translator device. Alan watched in amazement as her slender fingers worked with incredible precision. He had provided tools and some electronic components from his collection, but the actual repairs were beyond his understanding. "Almost done," Nix said in her musical language, which Alan still couldn't understand. The past 2 weeks had been a careful dance of building trust. Nix had been terrified at first, jumping at every sound and sleeping only in short bursts. Alan had been patient, giving her space and showing through actions that he meant no harm. He had converted part of his workshop into a living area for her, with the old couch serving as a bed and a makeshift curtain for privacy. He brought her food and water, and they developed a system of gestures to communicate basic needs. Nix connected a final wire and closed the translator's case. She pressed a button, and the device glowed with a soft blue light. She looked up at Alan with hope in her silver eyes. "Testing," she said, and this time Alan heard the word in English. Though her voice had a strange metallic echo to it, Alan's eyes widened. "It works. I can understand you." Nix's face brightened. The universal translator is functioning again. Not perfectly, some words may translate incorrectly, but it should allow basic communication. "This is amazing," Alan said. "I have so many questions." "As do I," Nix replied. "First, I must thank you for your kindness. You had no reason to help me, yet you did. Alan shrugged. It seemed like the right thing to do. You were hurt and scared. On my world, such kindness to strangers is rare, Nyx said. She touched the translator at her wrist. My name is Nyx. I am a Selenite from the moon Caldoria. I'm Alan Carter. You're on Earth, in a country called the United States. He paused. Why were you in that escape pod? What happened? Nyx's glow dimmed slightly. A sign Alan had come to recognize as sadness or distress. I was abandoned, left to die on a strange world. Over the next hour, Nyx told Alan her story about the Xerillians who had conquered her people, her position as an engineer on the ship, and how she had been framed for sabotage and abandoned on Earth as punishment. They chose this planet because they believe humans are violent and primitive, Nyx explained. They thought you would kill me if you found me. Alan frowned. We're not perfect, but we're not all bad either. I see that now, Nyx said. You have shown me more kindness than I experienced in years on the ship. Alan told her about his own life, how he had once been an aerospace engineer for a major company, designing parts for spacecraft and satellites. How 3 years ago, his wife and young daughter had died in a car accident while he was away on a business trip. How he had quit his job, moved to this remote location, and become something of a hermit, working as a freelance mechanic and living with his guilt and grief. I'm sorry about your family, Nyx said when he finished. I'm sorry about what happened to you too, Alan replied. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. So what now? Alan finally asked. Do you want to try to get back to your people? NYX shook her head. Even if it were possible, I have nothing to return to. My family worked in the mines. They are probably dead by now. The Xerillians control all space travel, and as a branded saboteur, I would be executed immediately. Then you'll stay here, Alan said. It wasn't a question. If you allow it, Nyx said, I can help you with your work. My engineering knowledge could be useful. I'd like that, Alan said with a small smile. But we'll need to be careful. If people found out about you, they would take me away, Nyx finished. Study me, I understand. The next few weeks brought a new routine. During the day, Nyx stayed in the workshop, learning about Earth technology from Alan's books and helping him with his projects. Her knowledge transformed his simple repair jobs into works of brilliance. A local farmer's tractor that Alan fixed now ran better than when it was new. At night, when no one would see them, Alan would take Nyx outside to look at the stars. He showed her the moon, which looked nothing like her crystalline home moon, but still brought a sense of familiarity. He introduced her to Earth foods, music, and the simple pleasure of feeling rain on her face. For the first time in her life, Nyx experienced freedom and kindness. No one shouted orders at her or punished her for speaking. No one called her names or treated her as less than a person. Alan asked for her opinions and listened to her ideas. He taught her to play chess and laughed when she beat him after just 3 games. One evening, as they sat outside watching the sunset, Nyx turned to Alan. Why did you help me that first day? You could have called your authorities or just walked away. Alan thought for a moment. After Lisa and Emma, my wife and daughter, died, I shut down. I stopped caring about almost everything. When I saw you hurt and afraid, I don't know. Something woke up inside me. I needed to help you. I am grateful, Nyx said. On the ship, I was taught that humans were dangerous and primitive. But you have shown me that your people can be kind and good. Some of us, Alan said, not all. A week later, Nyx woke in the middle of the night, struggling to breathe. Alan found her gasping, her skin an alarming dull gray instead of its usual blue-purple glow. Nyx, what's wrong? He asked, kneeling beside her. Not sure, she managed to say between labored breaths. Something in the air, maybe. Different from my home. Alan helped her to his truck and drove through the night to the next town, where his old friend Olivia Martinez worked as a doctor. He had called ahead as she met them at her private clinic's back door. Olivia's eyes widened when she saw Nix. My God, Alan, when you said you needed help with someone who wasn't human, I thought you were exaggerating. Can you help her? Alan asked desperately. Olivia hesitated only a moment before nodding. Let's get her inside. After examining Nix and running some tests, Olivia determined that certain elements in Earth's atmosphere were slowly poisoning her. She created a treatment that would help Nix's body adapt, but it would take time. You'll need these injections weekly, Olivia explained as she administered the first dose. Eventually, your system should adjust. Thank you, Nix said, her breathing already easier. As they drove home in the early morning light, Alan looked over at Nix. I was scared I was going to lose you too. Nix reached out and touched his hand, the first time she had initiated physical contact. I am not going anywhere, Alan. You have given me a new life. I want to see what it can be. 6 months had passed since Nix crashed on Earth. The weekly treatments from Olivia had worked well, and Nix could now breathe Earth's air without difficulty. Her skin had regained its healthy blue-purple glow, and she had grown stronger. Alan's workshop had become a place of innovation as they combined Nix's advanced knowledge with Alan's practical skills. One sunny afternoon, they were testing a new solar power system Alan had designed with Nix's help. It was far more efficient than anything currently available on Earth. This could help many people, Nix said as she adjusted a panel. Clean energy is something your world needs. Alan nodded. Maybe someday we can share this technology more widely. For now, it's just for us. He didn't say what they both knew that. Revealing such advanced technology would raise questions about where it came from. Questions that might lead to Nix being discovered. Nix understood the danger. She had seen enough news reports and internet information to know how humans often feared what they didn't understand. While Alan and Olivia had accepted her, there was no guarantee others would. As they worked, a small light on Nix's wrist suddenly began to flash. She froze, her silver eyes wide with fear. What is it? Alan asked, noticing her reaction. This cannot be, Nix whispered. She tapped the light, bringing up a holographic display that showed a small blinking dot moving across a map of the sky. It's a Xerillian ship in Earth orbit. Alan's stomach tightened. Are you sure? Yes, all Selenites have tracker implants. Nix pointed to a small bump under the skin of her shoulder. I thought mine was damaged in the crash, but it must still be sending a signal. Can you disable it? Not without specialized tools. Nix's hands trembled. Alain, if they found me, they won't just take me back. They'll eliminate any evidence of my presence here. That includes you. Alan paced the workshop, thinking quickly. We need to leave. Pack whatever you need. We'll take my truck and head into the mountains. As they gathered supplies, Alan called Olivia to warn her. If anyone comes asking about us, you've never heard of Nix and haven't seen me in months. They loaded Alan's truck with food, water, tools, and the few personal items Nix had acquired during her time on Earth, a small collection of crystals, books about Earth, and a handmade blanket Alan had given her. Just as they were about to leave, they heard the sound of an aircraft overhead. It wasn't like any normal plane or helicopter. The noise was a high-pitched whine that made the windows vibrate. Too late, Nix said, her voice tight with fear. That's a Xerillian scout ship. Alan grabbed his old hunting rifle from a cabinet. We'll hide in the cellar under the house. Its reinforced concrete might block your tracker's signal. They ran to the house and down into the small cellar. Alan had just closed the heavy door when they heard the crash of breaking glass above them. "They're inside," Nix whispered Dot. Alan held the rifle ready, though he doubted it would do much against aliens with advanced technology. Nix touched his arm. "I'm sorry I brought this danger to you," she said. "Don't be sorry. These past months have been the best since I lost my family." Alan gave her a small smile. "I was alone before you came." Heavy footsteps moved across the floor above them. Then silence. Suddenly, the cellar door was ripped off its hinges. Light flooded in, blinding them momentarily. When Alan's vision cleared, he saw a tall figure in the doorway, wearing what looked like armor. It was a Xyrillian. "The tracker works perfectly," said a familiar voice. Commander Draz stepped into view, his 4 eyes narrowing as he saw Nix. "Dirt Digger, you've survived longer than expected." 2 more Xyrillians appeared behind Draz, holding weapons pointed at Alan and Nix. "Leave the human," Draz ordered. "He's not our concern." "No," Nix said, stepping in front of Alan. "If you want me, you'll have to take him too." Draz laughed. "Protecting. A primitive? How touching, but unnecessary. We have no orders regarding Earth creatures." He looked at Alan with disgust. "Though perhaps we should eliminate this one, since it's seen us." Alan raised his rifle, but one of the Xyrillians fired. First, a pulse of energy hit Alan's shoulder, spinning him against the wall. He collapsed, the rifle clattering to the floor. "Alan!" Nix cried, rushing to him. "I'm okay," he gasped, though his arm hung useless at his side. "Just stunned." Draz grabbed Nix by her hair, pulling her away from Alan. "Enough of this. We have orders to retrieve and eliminate you, Dirt Digger. Your presence here is a contamination risk." As Draz dragged Nix toward the stairs, Alan noticed something on the floor. A small device that had fallen from one of the Xyrillian's belts. It looked like a weapon dot with his good arm. Alan lunged for it. His fingers closed around the strange object just as the second Xyrillian turned back toward him. Acting on instinct, Alan pointed the device and pressed what he hoped was a trigger. A burst of energy shot out, hitting the Xyrillian in the chest. The alien fell backward, its armor smoking. The third Xyrillian spun around, raising its weapon, but Alan fired again. This shot missed, hitting a support beam instead, which exploded. In a shower of splinters, Draz turned, still holding Nix by the hair. "Impossible," he snarled. "A primitive using our technology?" In that moment of distraction, Nix drove her elbow hard into Draz's midsection. He grunted, but didn't release her. Instead, he pulled out his own weapon and pointed it at Alan. "Drop it, Earth creature, or I'll vaporize you where you stand." Alan hesitated. The remaining Xyrillian guard had its weapon trained on him too. 2 against 1, and his shoulder was throbbing with pain. Then Nix did something unexpected. She reached up to her shoulder, dug her fingers into her own flesh, and tore out the tracking device implanted there. Blue blood ran down her arm as she threw the device at Draz's face. The momentary distraction was all Alan needed. He fired the alien weapon, twice more, once at the guard and once at Draz. Both shots hit their targets. The guard fell immediately. Draz staggered but remained standing, his armor apparently stronger than the others. "You will regret this," Draz growled, raising his weapon again. Before he could fire, Nix grabbed a piece of broken wood and swung it with all her strength at Draz's head. There was a sickening crack, and the commander collapsed. For a moment, they both stood in stunned silence, breathing hard. "Is he dead?" Alan finally asked. Nix checked Draz's pulse. "No, but he will be unconscious for some time." Alan winced as he tried to move his injured shoulder. "We need to go before more come. It's too late for that," Nix said, her voice grim. "Their ship will have alerted others. And now that we've fought back, they won't stop until they find us." Alan looked at the fallen Xyrillians, then at Nix. Then we fight. Together. Nix's eyes widened. Alan, you don't understand. The Xyrillians have technology far beyond Earth's capabilities. They could destroy this entire area just to eliminate me. Then we need a better plan than running, Alan said. He looked at the Xyrillian scout ship visible through the broken window. Can you fly that? Nix followed his gaze. Yes, but then we take the fight to them, Alan said. On our terms. The Xyrillian scout ship hummed with power as Nix's hands moved across the control panel. Alan watched in amazement as holographic displays appeared and disappeared with each touch. His injured shoulder had been treated with a medical device they found on board, and though it still hurt, he could move his arm again. Can you really fly this thing? Alan asked. Yes, Nix said, her silver eyes focused on the controls. I was not allowed to pilot on the Astral Voyager, but I studied the systems while doing repairs. The ship rose smoothly from the ground, hovering above the remains of Alan's workshop. Through the view screen, they could see the destruction the Xyrillians had caused. Broken windows, smashed doors, and equipment scattered everywhere. I'm sorry about your home, Nix said quietly. Alan shook his head. It's just a place. What matters is that we're alive. Nix guided the ship higher, accelerating through the clouds. The blue sky darkened to black as they left Earth's atmosphere. On a display screen, they could see a larger ship in orbit, the Xyrillian vessel that had brought Draz and his team. That's their command ship, Nix explained. It's small by Xyrillian standards, probably just a patrol vessel, but it still has weapons that could destroy an entire city. What's our plan? Alan asked. We can't outfight them. Nix was quiet for a moment. No, but we have something they don't expect: knowledge of their systems, and a human perspective they don't understand. She turned to Alan. The Xyrillians believe humans are primitive and stupid. They would never expect one to help operate their technology, and they would never expect a Selenite to fight back. So we use their assumptions against them, Alan said, catching on. Yes, I know how their ships work, where the weaknesses are. Nix pointed to a part of the display, showing the larger ship. Their main power coupling is here. If we can damage it, the ship will be disabled without destroying it. And then we use their communication system to broadcast the truth about how they treat Selenites, about Earth, about everything to the Galactic Confederation. There are other species who don't approve of Xyrillian methods, but have never had proof of their cruelty. It was a desperate plan, but the only one they had. Nix programmed the scout ship to approach the command vessel as if returning normally. When they were challenged by the Xyrillian communications officer, she responded using Draz's security codes, which she had memorized during her time on the Astral Voyager. Commander Draz requesting emergency docking. The Earth creature has wounded 2 team members, she said in the Xyrillian language, which the ship's system translated for Alan. There was a pause. Then the response came, Docking Bay 3 is open, Commander. Medical teams standing by. Nix guided their small ship into the docking bay of the larger vessel. As the airlock sealed behind them, she turned to Alan. Once we leave this ship, stay close to me. Act submissive, like they would expect from a primitive. Let them think they have nothing to fear from you. Alan nodded. I can do that. They exited the scout ship to find 4 Xyrillian guards waiting. Their confusion at seeing Nix piloting the ship and Alan walking freely lasted just long enough for Nix to raise the weapon they had taken from Draz and fire. 2 guards fell before the others could react. Alan used his own captured weapon on a 3rd guard while Nix dealt with the 4th. Then they were running down the corridor, following Nix's memory of standard Xyrillian ship layouts. This way to the power control room, she said, turning left at a junction. Alarms began to sound throughout the ship. A voice over the intercom announced, "Intruder alert. Selenite prisoner and Earth creature in Sector 4. All personnel to battle stations." They reached the power control room, but the door was locked. Nyx quickly accessed a control panel beside it, her fingers flying over the symbols. "Can you open it?" Alan asked, watching nervously for guards. "Yes, but—" She was cut off as energy bolts hit the wall near them. 3 Xyrillian soldiers had appeared at the end of the corridor. Alan pushed Nyx behind him and returned fire, forcing the Xyrillians to take cover. "Hurry!" The door slid open, and they rushed inside. Nyx immediately went to the main console, while Alan sealed the door behind them. "That won't hold them for long," he said. "I only need a few minutes," Nyx replied, her hands moving rapidly over the controls. "I'm redirecting power from their weapons to overload the main coupling." Warning lights flashed across the console as the ship's computer detected the power. Surge. Nyx ignored them, continuing her work. The door shuddered as something heavy struck it from outside. "They're breaking through," Alan warned. "Almost done," Nyx said. "Now I need to access the communication system." The ship lurched suddenly, and the lights flickered. "What was that?" Alan asked. "The power coupling is damaged. They're losing main power." Nyx moved to another console. "This is the broadcast system. It can send a message to all Galactic Confederation channels." The door to the control room began to glow red as the Xyrillians used cutting tools from the outside. "Whatever you're going to do it fast," Alan said. Weapon ready. Nyx activated the ship's camera system and stood before it, with Alan at her side. She began to speak, her voice clear and strong. "To all species of the Galactic Confederation, I am Nyx, a Selenite engineer formerly aboard the Astral Voyager. I was abandoned on the planet Earth by Commander Draz on false charges of sabotage. This was not an isolated incident, but part of a pattern of abuse against my people by the Xyrillians." As she spoke, she transmitted data from the ship's own records documents, showing the systematic mistreatment of Selenites, orders for their forced labor, and even Draz's own report about abandoning her on Earth. "The Xyrillians told us that humans were violent primitives who would kill me on sight. Instead, I found kindness and respect from them, something I never received from the Xyrillians." She looked at Alan. "This human saved my life and taught me that life can be about more than servitude and fear." The door was now glowing white-hot, about to give way. "We call upon the Confederation Council to investigate these abuses and end Xyrillian control over Selenite territories." The door exploded inward. Xyrillian soldiers poured through, weapons raised. "Cut the transmission," shouted a Xyrillian officer, but it was too late. Nyx had already sent the message, along with all the evidence, to every corner of the Confederation. Alan and Nyx raised their weapons, prepared for their final stand. But before either side could fire, the ship shuddered again, more violently this time. The lights went out completely, replaced by dim emergency lighting. A new voice came over the intercom, not Xyrillian, but Selenite. "Attention, Xyrillian vessel. This is Captain Lyra of the Selenite resistance ship Crystal Dawn. We have received Nyx's transmission and have disabled your engines. Surrender your vessel or be destroyed." Through the viewports, they could see another ship approaching, sleeker than the Xyrillian vessel, with crystalline components gleaming in the starlight. The Xyrillian officer lowered his weapon slowly, his 4 eyes wide with shock. "Impossible. The Selenites have no ships." "Not that you knew about," Nyx said, a smile spreading across her face. "We have had a secret resistance for years, waiting for the right moment." 1 year later, Nyx stood on the balcony of the new Selenite embassy on Earth, looking out at the mountains of Montana. Behind her, Alan was speaking with Captain Lyra, now the official Selenite ambassador to Earth. So much had changed. The broadcast. had indeed reached the Galactic Confederation, sparking investigations into Xyrillian practices. With the support of other species, the Selenites had gained their independence. Earth had been formally contacted by the Confederation, beginning a new era for humanity. Alan joined Nyx on the balcony, taking her hand. His workshop had been rebuilt, now serving as a center for sharing technology between Selenites and humans. Happy? He asked. Nyx nodded, her skin glowing with contentment. I never imagined my life could be like this. Free, respected. She looked at him. Loved. All because you crashed in the right person's backyard, Alan said with a smile. No, Nyx replied. All because when everyone else in my life had abused and abandoned me, you showed me what life could be.